a very blunt, forceful, aggressive ideologist and organizer for Fluxus. Not a good leader. There's a difference. George was a great organizer and a fine administrator. To be a leader, you have to be able to work with people, to accept their peculiarities, to make a space for them to contribute in their own way. And in the early days, George was not so tolerant and couldn't do that.
August 1st, 1989. Warhol and George, Warhol and Fluxus. Somewhere there, very deep, they were the same. They were both Fluxus. Both dealt essentially with nothingness. Both dismissed the current life, civilization, everything that is being practiced today as everything is the same. Didn't take any of it seriously. Both took life as a game and laughed at it, each in his own way, untouched by themselves, looking at it all from the side or from high above and creating their own realities that didn't really fit into it.
George was a force in our lives, yes. And to try to conceive of Fluxus without him would be a great mistake.
By 1959, it becomes suddenly very active, mainly because John Cage opens up a school and has all of people coming to the school. Also, the so-called novel realists in France become very active. Plus, Ben Boitier becomes very active. So 1959 is a very influential year. We have Nanjin Pike doing first piece. We have Bostel doing first piece. Alan Caprow doing first happenings. We have first poster stamps of Bob Watts. A lot of card music that is written on cards, like of George Brecht. And first sort of concept art of Henry Flint. Then that goes on through 1960. And Fluxus comes in 1961.
Dick invited me to come stay at his house for a few days. And while I was there, I made for him a reconstruction of a matchbox that I had made a year before, which was just a big stora box of Fyrsticker matches for the kitchen. And I painted it white, and on the outside I wrote, "Open me," and then when you open it, it says, "Shut me quick." And he looked at it and said, "This is a real Fluxus thing. You should take it to George Maciunas." Well, I didn't really know who George was, but Dick had shown me the Fluxus thing, so I said, "Great," because it interested me to meet the guy who was doing this. So I went to see him, and he looked at it. I remember I walked up 5 flights of stairs to his apartment. The apartment belongs to Henry Flint now. And knocked on the door, all these no smoking signs over the door, and the door opens, and this little guy with funny round glasses looks out, and he says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Ken Friedman." And he says, "Yes, come in, come in." And we sat down in his kitchen. One room off to one side I could see was filled with shelves with boxes and little widgets and gadgets and funny things. And the other room had white, straw-colored tatami rice mat on the floor with funny objects where he could touch a thing, and a tool he wanted would float into where he could grab it. And in the kitchen, linoleum floor, black table, simple black chairs, and a refrigerator painted bright orange. And he said, would you like some orange juice? I said, yes. He opened the refrigerator, and from the floor of the refrigerator up to the ice chest level, filled with oranges, and then 4-gallon jars of fresh orange juice, half-gallon jars of fresh orange juice on each side of the little ice chest. So he poured me a glass of orange juice, and we talked for a few minutes. And he said, this is a very nice box. And he asked me, what do you do? And I told him what I was doing. And he said, would you like to join Fluxus?
This actually is probably, well, it's, I guess, the last known chart of Maciunis's, where he's trying to establish or trace the development of Fluxus in relation to other avant-garde activities during the time of Fluxus, and also explaining where Fluxus comes from. But it's kind of funny. He starts out with church procession, fantastic art, Versailles, super multimedia spectacles. Then he goes into Walt Disney spectacles, and that kind of ends. Then Roman circuses, medieval fairs, international expositions, world fairs, and that goes down into individualism, he says, which is Pollock, Georges Mathieu, Goutai, and then into Pike, Busdell, and things like that.
Until then, I was composing the kind of straight driving, serious art. A la Schoenberg, Bartok line, world angst, okay? Yeah. Not only me, but everybody, yeah? And it was a heavy scene, heavy. And then I was not that good either, but still I was, that expressionistic attitude. And I am, that's most like in my character, yeah, but in first concert of John Cage, I was not converted by his theory,
Then there are the, just leading into Fluxus, were these two series. One which was at Yoko Ono's loft, which was a series of new music event-like works that Lamont Young had organized with Yoko.
Hello? This is Yoko. I was doing my work in New York. I had a studio in Chambers Street, and I gave concerts of various people like Lamont Young and Henry Flint and all the names that you know. And it was a concert series that was attended by many interesting people, like Marcel Duchamp came to, Max Ernst came to, and when Marcel Duchamp came, I was hoping that he would notice my paintings. That was the first, I believe, of paintings with instructions, you know. So there's a painting to be stepped on, and I was hoping he would step on it. But I don't think he even noticed it. And I was a shy person, and I would not explain to Duchamp about, well, this is my painting, this is how it's, you know, those things. So I was just looking, would he step on it, you know? So George found out, and he came to this concert, one of the concerts in Chambers Street Loft, and he decided it's a good idea, and he got a place in the Midtown, in Madison Avenue, and he brought all these artists who did concerts in my loft, and started to do a concert in his gallery. He said, this movement should have a name, so please think of some name, think of some name. And I said, no, I'm not going to think of any name. And I think it's the next morning or the next morning, George said, I thought of a good name. And he said, I said, well, what is the name? And he said, Fluxus. And he opened the dictionary and showed me what Fluxus meant. Oh, there are many, many meanings about Fluxus. But one thing that he said, it was so fun, it says flushing, you know, like flushing the toilet. And he laughed about it, and he said, isn't that great, you know? But I was still not sure that all these artists doing work should be considered like a one movement and have a name. But he thought that was a good idea. So it was him who thought of the name Fluxus. And so that's how Fluxus started.
Musik til arbejdet. Nu.
There are a number of definitions of Fluxus, and again, they're all equally true.
Now, Fluxus contains event. Event means life. If I take a glass of water and I drink it, that is Fluxus. Now, if I make as if I'm drinking it, that is theater. If I roll into plastic, that is theater and happening. If I shout and do melodrama, that is theater happening, romanticism. But if I drink a glass of water, I think that is life, and that is Fluxus. Fluxus comes out of Duchamp, John Cage, and Zen. And Duchamp brought in the idea of ready-made, John Cage brought in the idea of life and impersonality, and Zen brought in something else.
It never had as clearly defined a program as if we had all met at a big table and said, okay, now this is our program, this is what we're going to do, and so forth and so on.
Fluxus in America is try to keep on to the impersonality research. Impersonality means non-ego research of John Cage, which did not succeed, but was very interesting as a tentative. Because I don't believe you can do anything non-ego. Man is 100% ego. And even when he becomes a non-egoist, it is pure ego, non-ego. So that you cannot get non-ego, but you can get a new statement on ego, which is non-ego. Complicated, huh?
Fluxus is hard to develop because it is hard to define, and because the people insist on the right to change. After all, Fluxus means change, and it's a rather good name for an art which is devoted to change.
Hold the magnolia seed pod upright in one hand. Examine by scratching the patterned stem. This show is titled Bread and Water. And it's titled that because one day I turned over some homemade bread and I found that it resembled the rivers of the world. This seems a little bit like the Irish Sea. I've looked at a great many atlases to do this performance and this work. And then I collected a table of objects, which I usually do and have for the last 3 of my exhibitions. So I simply apply my other things I'm doing to the handheld object. This is, let's see what this says. It says, rest fingers inside the horns of the squash for a good feeling. So then in doing that, you see we get the sound of the seeds rolling inside. And it actually is a very nice thing to do with a dry squash. So I'm interested in sound, which involves doing a performance. Everything I've done with those objects was a tiny performance that made a sound for me or for you.
A lot of Fluxus is gag-like. That's part of the humor. It's like a gag. In fact, I wouldn't put it in any higher class than a gag. Maybe a good gag.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't consider Fluxus art?
Art form, no. I think it's a good inventive gags.
The piece that Michunis especially liked was George Brecht's Exit, which is just an exit sign. The score reads exit, out, ut. And Michunis liked it in that, he described it in the interview with Larry Miller, of how it's a work that we all perform every day. We leave, we go out, we go through the exit, and we perform it without realizing it. It's just an everyday occurrence.
We are trying to do non-art, but non-art cannot exist because it is art. And we are trying to do life art, and life art cannot exist because it is either art or life. And if it's life, it's life. And then nobody knows about it. It's my mother-in-law opening the tap, and she doesn't care. And if she finds out it's drip music by George Brecht, then she starts thinking, and it's art. So you can't get one into the other. It's one and another. And that's important. But I think Fluxus brought up these questions